Hello my friends, in today's video we will take a look at Tamron 28-75mm F2.8 Di3 VXD G2 for Sony E-mount. The original Tamron 28-75 was basically released together with Sony A7IV, and I believe that it has significantly contributed to the overall success of the A7III. 4 years later we have the A7IV and also the G2 version of Tamron 28-75. In this video we will take a look at the performance of 28-75 G2 in combination with Sony A7IV, and we will try to find out whether you should consider getting one. 28-75mm focal range is a distinctive characteristic of this lens, and it largely determines whether this lens is suitable for you or not. Basically the whole theme is that it sacrifices 4mm on the wide end in exchange for compact and lightweight packaging and lower price. The difference between 24 and 28mm focal length is quite noticeable. 28-75 is still a very versatile focal range suitable for anything from landscapes and architecture to portraits and product photography. On the other hand, there are no compromises when it comes to the aperture. It is a constant f2.8 lens, which means that it is suitable for low-light shooting and blurring the background. One of the biggest strengths of the 28-75 G2 is the size and the weight. It weighs 540 grams and it is 11.76 centimeters long. That is a lot less than with any 24-70mm f2.8. Even more important than the actual weight saving is the balance. That is great with A7IV. This combination is not front heavy at all and the overall handling is great. That is actually the main reason why I bought this lens. I definitely miss the option to have this kind of light and nimble combination on the go after I switched to 24-70mm f2.8. The build quality is pretty good. The outer construction is still plastic, but the quality of the materials is a lot better in comparison to G1. That also contributes to the weight saving, so I can't complain. It isn't the most premium feeling lens out there, but it definitely doesn't feel cheap either. The mount is metal and there is a weather sealing gasket around the mount. The whole lens is weather sealed and there shouldn't be any dust gathering issues. 28-75 uses 67mm filter thread, which is great because it is small and shared with many popular E-mount lenses such as 20mm G or 24mm GM. I still like to use freewheel magnetic UV filter for additional protection and weather sealing, and also because of the magnetic lens cap, which is very convenient. Paddle-shaped plastic lens hood is also included in the box. It is on the smaller side, but it gets the job done. The zooming is much smoother and the resistance is much more even on this brand new copy. The travel of the zooming ring is very short and so is the barrel extension, and I do like that in this case. The focus ring is relatively narrow and it is positioned behind the zoom ring, which is not that common. The resistance is very reasonable and the manual focusing is surprisingly fine. It is actually one of the better focus-by-wire systems. A nice addition is the function button, which can be set up and used just like function button on Sony lenses. Another addition is the USB-C port. It allows you to connect the lens to the computer and customize the functionality of the function button, set the direction of the focusing ring, and switch between linear and speed-sensitive manual focusing. This USB-C port will also be used for firmware updates. So how about the optical qualities? I have tested a 28-75 G2 with 33MP sensor in Sony A7IV. This sensor isn't that demanding when it comes to optical qualities of the lenses, so let's take a look at how it works together. We will start at 28mm. The central sharpness is maximal right from f2.8. It can't get any sharper than that, so it stays this sharp from f2.8 to f8. The diffraction starts at f11, but it is still usable. The corner sharpness is actually just as good. The sharpness is fantastic, there is plenty of contrast and very little chromatic aberration right from f2.8. It stays this sharp until f8. The diffraction starts at f11. The image quality at 28mm is basically perfect. The optical excellence continues at 50mm. The central sharpness is excellent right from f2.8. The contrast is superb as well. The sharpness stays the same until f8. There is a slight decrease of contrast at f11, but it is still more than usable. The corner sharpness is again outstanding at f2.8. There is a tiniest improvement from f2.8 to f4, and then we can see perfect sharpness up to f8. The corners look still great even at f11 with no signs of diffraction. Nothing really changes at 75mm. The central sharpness is still maximal right from f2.8. Perfection continues at f4, f5.6 and f8. There is just a slight decrease of contrast at f11. The corners are also very sharp at f2.8, but the contrast can be a little bit better. It improves at f4 and f5.6, where the overall image quality basically returns to perfection once again. It stays this sharp at f8 and the contrast starts to decrease at f11. Overall, the results from my testing scene are basically perfect in combination with a 33 megapixel sensor. You can use 28-75 G2 at any focal length and any aperture from f2.8 to f8 or even f11, and you will always get excellent sharpness across the frame. Surprisingly, there is a lot of distortion and vignetting. At 28mm we can see a lot of barrel distortion, which turns to pincushion distortion at longer focal lengths. Fortunately, the sharpness is so good that it doesn't matter at all. The profile corrections can take care of both the distortion and vignetting without significant decrease in image quality. The overall image quality is fantastic. Tamron 28-75 G2 can definitely fully match the 33 megapixel resolution of Sony A7IV. The real-world images look just as good thanks to excellent sharpness, great contrast, and effective profile corrections. There isn't really anything that I can complain about regarding the image quality. The bokeh was a tricky topic with the original 28-75. It was probably the most criticized aspect of the G1, but when I tested it side by side with Sigma 24-70mm DGDN, it looked virtually the same. The bokeh on G2 is what you would or should expect from an f2.8 standard zoom. You can get a lot of background separation at f2.8, especially at longer focal lengths. The rendition of bokeh looks fine. It has 9 aperture blades, so it is reasonably smooth, including the outlines. I can say that the bokeh is not a weakness of 28-75mm G2. Just don't expect it to match f1.4 primes or anything like that. A big strength of 28-75 is the minimum focus distance. That is just 18 cm at 28mm focal length, which translates to 0.37 times magnification. At 75mm it is 38 cm or 0.24 times magnification. That makes it an excellent semi-macro lens. The image quality at minimum focus distance is very good, although you need to stop down a little bit to get the maximal sharpness. The autofocus in the stills mode works with no issues. It is fast, responsive and 100% reliable. All of the smart features such as real-time eye autofocus in video work just like with any latest Sony lens. The autofocus motor is completely silent and it won't be captured even by in-camera microphone. Regarding the video autofocus, there seem to be some firmware issues in combination with A7IV. It is very fast and accurate, but the transitions are not very smooth and it seems to be ignoring camera settings. It works great on my A7 III and A7R4, so I am sure that it will be fixed by firmware updates soon. 28-75 is naturally not stabilized, but the IBIS in A7 IV is sufficient at these focal lengths. Static shots are definitely usable even at 75mm. The in-body image stabilization behaves very predictably, so just pointing the camera around is also fine. If you need extra smoothness for video, you can use active steady shot setting, which comes with a minor 1.1 times crop. Lightweight of this lens is a bit of disadvantage when it comes to stabilization, but it won't make that much of a difference. Just like the original 28-75 G2 is parfocal, which means that it can keep the focus when you are zooming in and out. It is probably achieved digitally, but it doesn't really matter. There is some amount of focus breathing. There definitely are some standard zooms that are better in this regard, but I don't think that this amount is terrible. To sum up, I can say that I am more than happy with the Tamron 28-75mm F2.8 Ti3 VXD G2. The main factor that determines whether you should buy this lens is whether you can live without those 4mm at the wide end. If you can, you will get a lot of compensation. First of all, the optical qualities in terms of the sharpness and the contrast are fantastic. It is compact, light, and very well balanced on Sony cameras. The autofocus also seems to work great except for those firmware issues with A7IV, so I hope that it will be fixed as soon as possible. The build quality is fine, although not the most premium, and it is weather sealed. There isn't really that much that I can criticize. It really comes down to that 28mm focal length. If it is wide enough for you, I can very highly recommend this lens. If not, Sigma 24-70mm f2.8 DGDN is also a fantastic lens, but you will have to sacrifice that balance and compact size. Either way, there are at least two great choices for the A7IV, so anybody should be able to choose the right f2.8 standard zoom. So that's it for this video, thank you for watching, I hope that you liked this video and that you have found it to be useful. Stay tuned for more videos and maybe consider subscribing if you don't want to miss my future content. I appreciate your feedback in form of thumbs up or thumbs down. If you would like to ask anything or share your opinion, please do so in the comment section, and see you next time.